Welcome, Rav Yehuda Pellis, back to the yeshiva. A lot of places, a lot of spaces. Tzfat, Manchester, where we spent so many wonderful Shabbosos and times together. And now the Rosh Ulpana, the high school for girls, right here in Rosh Hashanah, around the corner. So welcome back to the mountain, welcome back to your home. In more ways than one. It's not just your yeshiva, the yeshiva of your family, your children. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's always the next special. You said welcome back home. And you know, it's something that one can understand when one stays in yeshiva, even for quite a few years. But when one leaves, it's not obvious that one can relate to the yeshiva as one's home. And this is, Baruch Hashem, my feeling indeed.
Well, before we talk about Parshas Pekudei, was there a time that you remember that you were the furthest from yeshiva at Har Etzion, somewhere in hell, somewhere out there? So, I remember something the yeshiva gave me. I feel connected to the yeshiva. What was your moment that you were far away geographically, but your heart was right here?
It's hard because I can say many things about that and many opportunities. I take you back, to yeshiva, being here about 10 years ago. Machzor got back together to spend the Shabbat together, and it was a few months after Rav Amital passed away. And we were sitting together, and I was sitting with my friends, and we sat and we said, let's share some stories and feelings about this very question that you have just asked. And it was amazing and so meaningful to see that everyone takes so much from the yeshiva. And for me, maybe, I'll share with you some of my memories from Rav Amital and Rav Lichtenstein, which means so much for me.
As they do to us all. So it is Parshas Pekudei. There's a lot happening. Pekudei, it's not yet Zachar, so we have a little bit of a break to just absorb Pekudei. But it is Rosh Chodesh Adar. The Mishkan, Purim, this is the construction of the Mishkan. So it's a bit of a repeat from Truma Tetzaveh, where we have our first burst and our first exposure. A lot of people working, Moshe, Betzalel, the construction, the Begadim. What stands out to you? At what moment does it all make sense? That's why we're seeing this whole story again.
As you say, by definition, it's something that repeats, but where would be the change? I mean, at the end of the day, it's not Truma Tetzaveh anymore, it's Pekudei, where we conclude everything. But in fact, the parasha describes that Moshe did so and so and so, and then I've been there already, I know what it's all about. But then there is, this stage where the Pasuk says, when we come to the conclusion, and Moshe says, the Pasuk says, Vayivarech ota Moshe. Moshe is giving a bracha. Okay, so it's nice, give me a bracha, or people say it, say something. Say shtikel dvarteiri, But Rashi points out, and says, Vayivarech ota Moshe, and he says, Yehi ratzon shetishre shchina b'maaseh yedeichem. And I take it as something which is very meaningful for me. We speak a lot about certain things that we want to do, to acquire, to capture, and then we make all the plans, and we make all the constructions, and then it's all there. And then, after a short while, it's gone already. I've been, I had it already, and I think
some visitors.
Yeah, welcome. And it says that Moshe says, "Listen, we've been through this since I started to command you, and apparently, as Chazal say, it's about 6 months, but now we come to the stage that it has to go with you." And I say, Tishrei Shechina b'maaseh yedechem. All these big plans would stay. It would be continuous, it would be consistent, it would be something that it's not just now and soon game over, it's something that you can take with you. And b'maaseh yedechem, we were talking too much and we were planning too much. Now, like we heard a lot from Rav Lichtenstein, shuvu lachem le'ohalechem, like we see after Ma'amad Har Sinai. Being so special, let's take it practically throughout our lives.
It's interesting because when you're talking about our Rosh Yeshiva, and Rav Lichtenstein and Rav Amital, they taught us so much about leadership in a quiet way. We never had seminars, we never had lessons. The way to be a leader is just to expose yourself to people, vision, and courage. Rav Amital certainly taught us about courage. But I think one of Rav Amital's major revolutions was in shrinking the distance between Rabbanim, Rosh Yeshiva, and Talmidim. And that's why the Rabbanim don't sit up front in a row, and we sit scattered amongst the boys. Our dress is a little bit more informal. The types of contact, it's much more commonplace, but in those days it wasn't. And to be honest, there are strengths and weaknesses, advantages and disadvantages. The thing about Parshas Pekudei, part of what makes it so modern is that Moshe becomes transparent. He could have very easily have worked in the back room with Bezalel, and everyone would have trusted him because he's already proven his commitment and his heroism in Parashat Ki Tisa. Yet after all this process, with all the vision, all the work, he has to give an accounting. He has to say how much gold, how much silver, how much copper, where did it go? And it's demeaning to a degree because it's Moshe Rabbeinu. And you have an oversight board, an oversight committee, and the accountants are sitting there with their glasses punching in numbers for Moshe. But part of the way in which you make yourself less imposing and less intimidating as a leader is just to create transparency. And I think maybe some of the leadership that's gone wrong in our day, because there has been leadership that's gone wrong, and is when there's not enough transparency, not just in let's say, psychological, but just in your life, just to make yourself a more human being. More.
Wow. And this transparency is not just in terms of that I'm okay, trust me.
Right.
I think that the Rav Amital would say, it's not that I want you to trust me, I trust you.
Okay.
And I felt it so strongly, speaking now about the days of Adar, Parashat Zachor. Next week, I can imagine, sitting in the Cheder Ochel Katan with Rav Amital and singing all along, and then the Cheder come to Rav Amital, Rav Amital, you are our Rebbe. And he kind of says, no, I'm not. And then they say, okay, we'll bring a mashke. And I remember, as far as I'm concerned, the British guys would say, we have Johnny Walker. Who has Johnny Walker? Okay, I go. And then in a few moments, someone is back with Johnny Walker, whatever. I don't drink whiskey, but and all this spirit. And then when we leave late at night, after Rav Amital said, Mouchar, ani olech lishon, people would go with him, walk along with him to the Yeshuv, dancing around him. So is he a Rebbe? Or is he not a Rebbe? And I think that this tricky answer that he says, I'm a Rebbe provided that you guys take responsibility for your life, for your spiritual life as well. If you want me as a Rebbe, something that is too far from you, I'm not there. But I don't mind to be your Rebbe, and now it's Shabbat Zachor, so let's do it. But it just strengthens what you have to do and your responsibility for your life. I take it with me, mamash.
Yeah. He shaped us by empowering us and unleashing us rather than fencing us into a box. And he also shaped the way we view history, shaped the way we view, it wasn't just a personal inspiriting. I remember in I think it was 1984. It was Parshas Pekudei, and Rav Amital quoted the Ramban in the beginning of the Sefer of Shemot. And the Sefer is called Sefer Agula, the Book of Redemption. And yet the redemption ends in the Midbar. And the Ramban says, well, Geula is not limited to this country. Geula is Malas Avosam. Anytime we return to that state where we're encountering HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that is a stage of Geula. And it opened my mind, it opened my imagination. Geula is not a time in history, it's not 1948 specifically, it's not grounded in this country. It's a long process which terminates with a national resettlement, with a historical terminus. I remember that night in the Cheder Ochel, this is before your time, there were some screaming going on. I mean, the Israelis were irate.
Yeah.
And they were screaming at us. I that showed up. I'm not the representative of the Chutz La'aretz, but it was a real shift because so many of the Israeli Talmidim in particular had been indoctrinated. I come from America. I hadn't really thought about redemption in the land of Israel, but they had assumed that redemption is living in the land of Israel, and it's a completely absent experience outside. Here they were saying, no, this is the epicenter.
Yeah.
So you've been around. You've spread so much of the yeshiva's Torah and its presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu outside of Israel, particularly in Manchester. How did this yeshiva help you do that? Looking back at that experience, what did you think you accomplished most?
Yeah, besides the empowering that we've just discussed, I think that the sense of responsibility that we have and the understanding that we have to be genuine and to find in each step of our life, like we spoke about Geula. Geula, first step, so to speak, is Sefer Shemot, which means that now we have more and more steps, and you can't predict them necessarily, but you must look deeply and look at that. So I remember 1998, let's say Tafshin Nun Chet, which is the Yovel, Jubilee, 50 years for State of Israel. Everyone is rushing at the end of Yom HaZikaron to get to Rav Amital's Sikha of Yom HaAtzmaut, and we know what we are going to speak about, and it was so special that he kept repeating his messages, and he said, I'm Ud Mutzal Me'esh, survived the Holocaust, etc. And he spoke, he said, listen, it's a new era now. 50 years, we can't just repeat. We will keep repeating, but we just can't repeat. We have to find another layer, another meaning for that. And thinking about, maybe this is Rav Amital's memory that I take with me about the demanding to take it a step further. And I think that also Rav Lichtenstein, speak about the days of Adar. So Purim comes and it's a very special time. And I remember Rav Lichtenstein speaks before the Purim and the Sikha that he gives on Tetz Zayin Adar. The Sikha on Tetz Zayin Adar would be, guys, listen, surely enough, if we have achieved, if we have come up this mountain to a certain degree that we have got throughout Purim, because of Nichnas Yain Yatsa Sod, because it's a special meaning, because of all these things, what would be the next step? There is no way that we'll go now down, we'll slip down. We say in the Megillah, Kimu v'kiblu alehem ve'al zar'am. This state of mind where one knows that one acquires something, but my descendants would not just follow me, they would be, as again, both Rav Amital and Rav Lichtenstein say, what's your ot letter in the Torah? What's your way to and then I examine it on a daily basis. And I'm trying to see what can I work out. Crazy days today in the world generally, and there is no way that our Torah today would be just as it was yesterday. By comparing and having the sense of history and understanding, and then finding the relevancy that we can find today.
Here's an interesting question. You're back here in Eretz Yisrael now 3 years since you came back from Manchester.
Yeah.
Baruch Hashem, you resettled your family, your children, some married, and Baruch Hashem, you've resettled, which isn't easy. But what do you miss? What do you miss about those days that were different, that were lonely, that were waiting and hoping to come back to Eretz Yisrael? But life isn't black and white. It's not as if there's something special about being in a different land, people relying. What do you miss about those days?
Wow, it's a very good question. I think that it comes in few different ways. First of all, for myself, for my wife, for my family, being there, for my kids, all of a sudden to see themselves, no one has appointed them. We never told them, you are shlichim. But they figured it out. They found that they bring some message, okay? Not in a sense of gava, but in a way that they see that they have something to deliver. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. Also, on the other hand, I think that in Chutz La'aretz, I'm not well expert, going around so many communities, just a little bit around England and America. But being around, you see that people, somehow, as I said before, davka, since they are abroad, they are asking themselves some basic question that we take for granted. And they would ask themselves, what is be'emet today my kesher to Torah, or my kesher to Eretz Yisrael, and my kesher to Tzionut in its broader meaning. And I took from that a lot, and not obviously saying about the sense of Keilah. And I can say, when we got back to Givat Shmuel near Bar Ilan, we helped to establish a Keilah for hundreds of young chevre that made Aliyah, and it's to do with what we just said. Okay, we go on Aliyah, great, we are here. Okay, what would be the next morning? What are we doing now? How can we cope and carry it on? And I think that was a feeling for us that we took the sense of Keilah, how strong Keilah is, and how can it give to its members, and how members can give to a sense of Keilah. And somehow we are a general Keilah of Am Yisrael, but there is a lot of meaning of Keilot that people can relate to.
I spent so many wonderful weekends in the Keilah of Manchester, and I value the community consciousness, the closeness of the families, the warmth. And it is frustrating in this country, in part because the national identity gobbles up communal identity. We see ourselves as, it's almost racist to build your Keilah here. You have to integrate with all Israelis. Also, the religious services are built in, they're baked in we pay taxes, we can receive anything we need, whereas in Chutz La'aretz you have to assemble a Chevra Kadisha, a mikvah, a shul committee. Yeah. And there's a confidence here that this country will last, whereas communities don't last unless you invest in them. How do we solve it here? How do we solve it in this country? Because we are missing that communal feel and consciousness. Is there any solution, or we just have to throw our hands up in the air? It's not in the word.
Yeah, I don't use terminology in terms of solutions, but a way that we can cope with that is to strengthen the keilot amongst us, and also to see that we are on the same page. I would love to speak with someone and to see that I disagree with him or her, and in some ways we agree about many things. And the more thing that we have in common would give us more motivation to share things together and to work together towards something that we believe in. We should not, as you said, we should not take things for granted. If we see it something that we are too comfortable in Eretz Israel, it's a dream, you know. And I just heard this morning someone that told me, left me a message about a lady in Ukraine that sends a message, says, you must help us. Every Jew that here is now have to get to the border with Moldova, etc. But you get this feeling that people need certain things. We are quite comfortable here. The more we'll be exposed to these needs and to these values, it will be better. And also, on a side note, to any Israelis that listen to me, guys, go on shlichut. Okay? In Chutz La'aretz say go on aliyah, and here I say to go to shlichut, as I said before, to do that. It's something that would enhance one's position and also would expose someone to these needs and these values that we can take and structures that we can take from communities in Chutz La'aretz.
So one final question for you. There was a time, a long time ago, where Israel wasn't such a comfortable country physically, materially, and it was very idealistic. We all came here, we were willing to forgo on some of the comforts and luxuries. Today, thank God, Baruch Hashem, economically, quality of life, I think Israel is one of the most expensive countries to live in. Our bank accounts aren't that high, but Baruch Hashem, our quality of life. Is there anything in this from Chutz La'aretz, that food, that one, is there anything? It's hard to imagine. I don't miss anything, but having been there, you're an Israeli. Is there a special dish or a special food or a special luxuries you can't get here? I'm blanking, but maybe you have something.
Yeah, British guys would understand me that, you know, it's easy to go to Marks and Spencer or Tesco to get, you know, these items that you like, and it's easy to find. But באמת, I know when we left Manchester in 2006, at the end of our first shlichut, when I headed there a school, King David in Yavne Girls, Ulpena, so I told the people, it sounds bad, but I'm already not missing Manchester, and I don't think that I will miss, but I'm missing already the people. And it's to do with what we said. I'm missing the people in Manchester, the people that we love still today so much. Obviously, you know, we don't keep in touch on a daily basis, but not just in terms of sharing smachot, knowing that we share the same values, and at the end of the day, at any given moment, once they come and they move here, if they found it the right step for their family, that would be for us very special. And in the meantime, we are happy to be in touch. And this is another opportunity. I'm thanking you, Moshe, for having this opportunity, being in touch with the people abroad. We love you, and you're most welcome to come home.
Well, we send out our wishes to the people in Manchester and in Melbourne, in Montreal and in Modi'in. Baruch Hashem Yeshiva has this global impact, and keep being a great emissary and a great representative of our yeshiva. And you're right on the next mountain, so go back to your mountain and build that mountain, build young lives of young women who are going to lead our people, and come back again to visit us.
תודה רבה for the opportunity. מרבים בשמחה, חודש טוב, שבת שלום.
חודש טוב, שבת שלום.